This is great. I'm with Gill Ereaut, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to this. So if you have just tuned in, if you don't know what's happening, I am talking to each of the 22 practical inspiration authors shortlisted in this year's Business Book Awards to get a bit of backstory on the book, to find out a little bit more about them, and so that you can sort of feel a bit more connected. Do remember, all of the shortlisted titles are 99 pence or 99 cents on the Kindle store until the awards. So if you like the sound of this, you know what to do. But hello, Gill.
Hello.
It's so lovely to have you here. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I am thrilled.
You should be. We are too. Tell us a little bit about the way we talk around here and why you wrote it.
Well, the very short answer is because a friend of mine challenged me to do your proposal challenge, and then you wanted to publish it. So that was the really.
And you only went and won it.
I only went and won it, exactly. And that was a bit of a like, oh, okay, well, I better get on with it. It took me a while to get on with it, I know. But the reason why I wrote the book is that I'd been working in my business for 20 years, developing a new approach to organizational culture by using an organization's internal language as a way of reflecting back to it, sort of en masse, what might be going on under the surface. And it turned out that lots of clients wanted to buy that process, and in fact to repeat buy it, which is always very gratifying. And running that business, I had very little time or space or headspace to capture the method that was being developed across all of these projects. But people kept asking me for things to read about it. And there really wasn't anything, so I thought I'd better write it.
Yeah.
And it was a great nudge, really, to get on with it and write it down.
And for me as a publisher, and particularly looking at through the proposal challenge, the idea of you as an organizational linguist using this as an artifact, as a way of really, so we've subverted that phrase, the way we do things around here. It's the way we talk around here. That's one of those things that's happening in plain sight, isn't it?
It is. And when I explain the concept to people, they immediately get it. Yes, of course, your organizational language reflects your culture. I think the crucial thing I realized along the way was that it doesn't just reflect your culture, it perpetuates your culture. So the language gets very stuck, and it can be very difficult for people to break out of kind of the habits of language and the habits of culture, because essentially the only people who are really conscious of that are the new joiners, and they're usually in the least powerful position to comment. So it kind of makes sense to people, and that, I think, is how it got the degree of traction as an approach. And really what I wanted to do with the book was to give it a broader spread, to make the ideas available much more widely than I could manage, or we could manage, as a relatively niche consulting business, and invite people to experiment with them, and play, and to honestly to kind of perpetuate this thing. That's why I did it.
Why does it matter, Gill? Why does it matter what kind of language you use and how aware of it we are?
Well, I think culture matters, and I think people are increasingly recognizing that culture matters. They're also realizing language matters, but on the culture front, culture is crucial not just to organizational success, kind of that's almost taken for granted now, but I really feel it's important to the people within an organization. The culture you work in is absolutely essential to your sense of well-being, your purpose, and in a kind of more general sense to the morale of an organization. And people's everyday, we spend so much time at work. People's everyday lives are fundamentally affected by the organizational culture, if they work within a culture that they work within. But culture is often treated in three ways that I realized I disliked. One is it's often presented as kind of mystical and unknowable. Well, I don't think that's the case. I mean, certainly demonstrated that it's not the case. It's often treated as kind of countable. We'll just ask, we'll look at the staff survey, and then we'll we'll put it through some number machine, and we'll benchmark it against lots of other organizations, and we'll tell you what your culture is. And that, I just think culture is too ineffable. It's too it's too emotional actually to put through that kind of machine in any kind of meaningful way. But the third way that I particularly dislike is that culture is treated as top down. You know, it's a thing that management or leadership can say, we're going to change our culture. And well, in fact, they say to staff, you're going to be different. You're going to change our culture. And I just think very strongly that culture change can't be done to people. Change happens, real change happens through groups of people interacting and acting differently in an organization, whether that's a kind of small club or a huge multinational. It's an ongoing process. Culture is what you do, not what you have. And I think people can change, not because it's done to them, but because if they can see the sense, they can see the habits, and then they can see the sense of choosing to interact and behave differently. And I think what I've developed and laid out in the book is a powerful but actually transparent way that everyone in an organization can be helped to recognize their current patterns of interacting and behaving, aka culture, and with that insight, that shared insight, choose together to do things differently. So if you like, it's a kind of what I'm trying to do is to create a not necessarily bottom up, but definitely including the bottom, because that's where the power and change will come from, is just the people in the organization.
And it's so interesting, those sort of different approaches to culture. I recognize all of those in, you know, books that I've seen and the way people talk, ironically. But that point about, you know, feeding the stats into a computer, I mean, clearly there's something missing there. As you're saying, you're missing the ethical bit, or I don't know. But language does give you a way of demonstrating things, because it's not very much you did this and you did that, and you can argue, you know, why people did this like that. But you can't argue with this corpus of evidence that shows how people are using pronouns and who they mean when they say we, and, you know, all of that stuff. It's evidential, and it's also trackable, and I think that's the power of it as well, isn't it? It's
evidential without being numeric.
Yes.
And that is a concept that people often struggle with, but when they see it, they recognize the strength of it, the power of it. I mean, it is essentially a qualitative method, but particularly with internal language, typically what we would do is sample a load of internal language and see what we could think were patterns in it and come to obviously our conclusions about what that might mean for them. But the crucial test would be to show those patterns back to a wide range of people in the organization. And the first question is, do you recognize these patterns? And usually they're going, oh my goodness, we do. And typically they will say, I completely recognize what you've just shown me, and I never saw it before. And that's very energizing for people. And then the next question is, and how far is this historically, or, you know, originates historically, usually those patterns, how far are those sets of patterns still serving you well? They used to make sense in the past. Your environment's changed, your strategies changed, you've had to change, and the old habits have just remained. You can't change something you can't see. So the process of allowing people to see those really familiar patterns is actually, in a sense, the validity of the method. You know, that whoosh of recognition and a kind of a sense of truth that people get when they see that is, for me, much more powerful than any numbers about how many people said this or that. And if I've said for many years, if I didn't have to make a living, you know, doing that consulting work, I would do it for nothing, just to see that change, you know, just to see the light go on in people's eyes when they go, oh wow, that's why we do that. I don't have to do that anymore. And then of course you've then got to work with that kind of rush of insight and energy to help shape it and steer it, you know, into a direction that's healthy for the organization, what it's trying to do at the time, at this moment.
It's so exciting, and you've explained it brilliantly. I hope everybody's as excited. You can see why I was excited. So good. But I want to ask you the most important question of all, Gill, which is, how did it feel when you found out you've been shortlisted?
It was dead exciting. I mean, you know, I'll be honest, I went to the announcement event partly to see my mates, you know, see the Practical Inspiration mates and you. And I went sort of hopeful, but also realistic. You know, the Business Book Awards are competitive awards. My book is in a very competitive category. Everyone was telling me that. Okay, no pressure. And there was a very strong field of entries. You just had to look, down the list of titles on the long list. And then, as you know, Alison, the shortlist announcement, there were 10 slots on the screen, and it got to number 9 and mine wasn't there. And I started mentally to sort of put my stoical smile on. And then number 10 was me. So there was a huge sort of like big tease and then a whoosh for me. And then, of course, I learned later from somebody much cleverer that they were being announced alphabetically by title. And the way kind of comes quite late. So I tell you, if I ever write another book, the title is definitely going to be in with A, or possibly the word aardvark. So definitely.
Yeah, aardvark's at work. That's
Aardvark at work, absolutely. But there's no other way to describe it than thrilled. I mean, it has sort of re-energized me after the hard work of writing and launching the book, which is hard work. There's no question about it. And just really fabulous to get that recognition that somebody, a group of people who don't know me from Adam kind of started to look at this book and thought, oh, that's interesting. That, I want to shortlist that. That looks really valuable. And that's a step in the direction of the objective, which I talked about earlier, about getting these ideas out there. That was my real primary motivations, to get them out there and see them out in the world being played with them by other people.
Yeah, see them changing organisations everywhere. Brilliant. Well, all power to that.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you. I will be seeing you on the 10th of September when we will know everything. But until then, Posh Rocks, absolutely, glad rags. Enjoy the moment, and congratulations, Jill. Couldn't be more.
Thank you, and thank you for getting me there in the first place. So, thank you.